With me, I have five-time best of winner, founder and owner of Challenger TCG, Collin the Boss Man Kaiser. Collin, just to immediately get to the meat and potatoes. New legend, new set. Who are you playing and why?
Yeah, so I've kind of locked in on Akali as the champ I'm currently interested in, especially as they finally announced the pricing for RQ Barcelona. And the Jace looks cool, but it's not anything I think too special that like I feel like, man, I really got to win this event. So as it kind of was for me previously, I was a little bit of a best of hunter when it came to Sett. Obviously, I was still able to top twice with Sett, but I don't think it's quite a strong enough deck in order to win an event. Once you kind of get to the top tables, eventually you'll have like the match like I did against Squirtle, where I just missed a turn one play going first and second, which was, the odds were very small that happened. But as soon as it happens, like my deck's not good enough to be able to catch up from something like that, right? So the inconsistencies will eventually find you, right? And so I've swapped over to Akali, who I think is in a similar position, if not a little bit worse than Sett, to be honest. I think that she struggles into a lot of things, but I've got a unique build of Akali that I think is very fun at the very least. How good it is, there's some matchups it's great. There's some matchups it's completely unwinnable. So I'll just be running it through the event and leaving it up to the luck of my matchmaking, I suppose.
So let's talk about that, because you said before, like, it's going to be a bit middling about whether Akali will be able to top the power charts. Do you think Akali is capable of winning an RQ in your hands?
Yes. I mean, I think that any deck is theoretically possible to win an RQ. What it comes down to in card games in general, and what I like to explain to people, is that card games are all about variance, whether it be variance in your draws, variance in your matchups. I think you always have a shot, no matter how bad the matchup is. It may be single-digit percentage for you to win, right? But there's always something that you theoretically can do, which I think is what makes card games interesting, right? And us as players and professionals like myself, really all that we can do is we can skew the odds in our favor. Now, obviously, when it comes to the Sett best of, I was able to win 5 of in a row, but I was never 100% whenever it came to that, right? I had a few people that were on my trail. Sydney was the one that was the closest, where I got 9th place with Sett, and there was a guy who got like 15th or something like that, So it was very, very close when it came to the race, and there have been quite a few of them that are like that too, right? But me as a professional player who's been playing Sett for as long as I have, with an actual unique build that nobody else has been able to perform with, my odds were probably high 80s to 90% for me to get the Sett, is what I imagined, right? So now that we're going into a new format, I don't think my percentage will be quite as high with Akali, because like I said, with Sett, I felt like there was game into any matchup. With Akali, there are a couple matchups that I'm just 0% into. Well, as 0% as 0% gets, right? So, and that's just the nature of the beast, right? So if I get some bad matchups, then, anything can happen. But hopefully, so long as I play against what I'm expecting, then I'll be all right.
I mean, definitely, I think the part of, especially the regional qualifiers, just the sheer variance that you can run into, it is a damn miracle that we see so much consistency coming from the players that we do see top these events time and time again. Now, I do want to call back to you to the comparison to Sett, because when you started playing Sett at the very start, were you of a similar opinion that, like, well, technically you can? What were your feelings about Sett when you started playing him?
I think I played him in Sett 1, and I actually won the first North American tournament on Sett, which was a Charlie's 12K. It was like an unofficial event that was simultaneous with the, I think it was Las Vegas Star City games. But I won with Sett, which was like, obviously it was good enough to be able to win that event. Granted, I was doing a lot of stuff that was, I'll say non-traditional, and a lot of people weren't really expecting in the meta. So, I was playing like Primal Strength and stuff like that back then, before we had Punch First. So, there was a lot of otherwise kind of nonsense stuff that was unexpected, and then kind of as the format went on, people expected it more. I didn't do very well at RQ Houston because I played against a bunch of people who just knew what my deck was, because I won the event previously. So my first loss was to a Master Yi who was like, oh yeah, we were afraid of your deck because you won the last event before this. So I was entirely teched for it, and I was like, okay. Then obviously he didn't end up doing very well because nobody actually played my set list. because it was very unique. But it's just how these things go, right? So the more popular you get, the more people target you. And then I obviously stopped playing Sett after that for Sett 2 because I wanted to try and win after doing particularly poorly in Houston. So I got top 4 at one of the events and then top 64 in Italy. And after that, I tried Victor for one event in France and I started out okay, but then my day 2, I got like some of the worst matchups and I didn't get very much sleep. So I bombed out of that event. And then after that, I was like, you know what? I'll go back to old reliable, play Sett, top 8 at Atlanta, and kept it with ever since. So now I'm kind of in like a weird position where I know I'm a good enough player that if I played the best deck, obviously I was able to do particularly well doing that in Vegas where I played the best deck and I got top 4. But there's also times where I just want to do something fun and have fun with a legend that I think is at least a little bit interesting, even if she's not very good.
Because I am very interested, because when you started out with Sett, were you thinking, this is a legend that can dominate at the RQs? Or was it...
I'm a very anti-meta player is how I like to build, which has been a little bit weird in Riftbound. In previous games, if you look at like, I don't know, Magic or Pokemon or One Piece, for example, typically there is just like a best deck that's going to take up 30% of the field or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Here in Riftbound, though, the best decks are like 9 to 10%. Granted, eventually, once you get to like a certain point at day 2, they do end up becoming like 20 to 30% of the field, just based on those decks having such a higher win percentage than everything else.
But you have to get there.
Yeah, exactly. So that's how I came up with my original set list. Was like, everybody's playing Kaisa. Let me build an anti-Kaisa list. And that's what I ended up doing. And it obviously did well for me. I ended up beating quite a few Kaisas in that first event that I ended up winning. But ever since then, I don't know, my take has kind of changed a little bit where I want to build something that is game into the field as much as possible and then rely on my skills as one of the best players in Riftbound to outplay my opponents.
So if I understand you correctly, you were not fully sold on the fact that Sett was maybe able to consistently threaten for the top 1. Was there a tipping point where it's like, this is now like my second or third top finish? Maybe it is a little more realistic than I initially anticipated?
Not particularly, to be honest. Once I got to the point where I won the best of, then and especially after topping a couple of times, I was like, whatever happens, happens. But I knew that, like I said, anything is possible. I think any legend can actually win an event. It's all just comes down to the percentage points. And I can tell you that the other people that were in that top 8 between Diwali, who was on Diana, or obviously the eventual winner, Squirtle, had much higher winning percentages than I did. Technically, if you did the math and it was like, there's 8 people and they're all 12.5% to win, that's definitely not true, So I think it just comes down to, I don't know, eventually your luck has to run out at some point. And obviously mine just ended up against Squirtle, where he had some nasty top decks against me, and obviously missing a tournament play every game was
even he couldn't believe it. Like
yes.
on camera, yes. It was quite. I recall watching you in the venue, and the audible groan in the audience. It was, well, that is card games for you. There is only a certain amount of situation you can prepare for. But talk me through the selection process and how did you end up on Akali? Who else was in the running?
Obviously, I just released a Kinnan guide, so I think if I were to be playing for the win, Kinnan would probably be one of my top choices. You kind of put him he's like at the bottom of S tier to top of A tier in my mind in terms of where his positioning is in the meta. I think he's one of the decks that actually, as I mentioned with Sett, that has potential to beat everything just based on how I built the list. There's game into pretty much everything. There's never something they're going to sit across the table from and just be like, oh, well, I already lost. No reason to play. So that's something that I very much so like about that deck. What I don't like is that the best of probably won't be worth that much. And, that's where I'm at with it. So maybe if they change up like the champion cards or something, or there's one that I particularly want, then I could see myself playing Kinnan. But, in Riftbound, I think that the majority of the prizing is in the best of system. And I think that's pretty cool. It incentivizes people to play what they actually like, whatever they think is fun, rather than just being like, oh, well, I have to play the best deck. Because otherwise there's no prizing to be done. That's not the case, and obviously with the best of Akali doing as poorly as they did at this last showdown, no shade thrown at them. It was just maybe an unlucky run or something like that. I'm like, you know what, I think I can do at least that. And I think there's a lot of hype around the Akali card, so I would love to be able to take one home.
I I think it is a fair point to make out, right? Because especially in the professional scene, it, the incentive to come to the events and the fact you can all do it full time is very much in the expected value you're expected to take home if you do well. Now, with Akali being incredibly popular, like almost similar to Ari levels, let's say in the League universe, there people are big fans. How big of a factor does that play in Legend selection?
Oh, for me, it's definitely huge. I mean, I came up with like I said, whenever I was looking at it, I was like, well, I can tell you as somebody who had the 5 best of sets, and I'm somewhat sentimental, but not super sentimental. I am not like Prismat, who has like the whole necklace of Annies or whatever. I'm keeping my one set that like, if technically, I'll sell it for some astronomical make believe number, but I have one set that I'm going to keep forever, and then the rest I'm
Which is the
slowly
one?
selling off. It's I think this was the one from, I think it might have been the Utrecht one, I want to say. I'm sure. I think it was the Utrecht one that is
Was
the
that one
physical
special
one.
in any way to you?
No, it just was the one that looked the nicest, I guess. So they're all the same cards. Just for background, I've been playing card games for about 15 years. I owned a shop for 6 years, and then I worked in a shop about 3 or 4 years previously to that. And once you get to a point where you're opening 20 cases to 40 cases of product for every set release that comes out in order to sell singles, you lose a lot of the like attachment to these cards, I guess. And that's just kind of carried on since, where it's like, because I've opened, I mean, thousands of cases of product over the course of my life and bought and sold, millions of dollars worth of cards. It just, you lose a lot of that sentimentality when it comes to a lot of these cards. So I think that's why, for me personally, I still have some sentimental value to like the run that I did with Sett. So that's why I always want to keep one best of, but still to me, it's a lot about the pricing as well. So I think for me, it'll probably be the same thing where, assuming that I'm able to win one of these Akalis that end up coming out at the RQs, I'll want to keep at least one, and then the rest of them, they'll probably end
Are
up
up
being
for
sale.
grabs.
Yeah,
Now,
of course.
as part of a team, it is absolutely killer if any of the team members duplicate of the selected legends. So I can imagine that legends, especially like Akali, where the expected value, if you do manage to win it, is a lot higher. How are those overlapping interests disputes, I'm going to call them, settled behind the scenes? Is that a very natural process, or is it talked about?
Yeah, so far it hasn't really been too much of an issue, where typically everybody on the team is like under the same understanding, where there's a little bit of a reason when you have like a high value item, potentially like this Akali, to like, if you have multiple lottery tickets going at the same time and then doing some sort of split based on that is a viable thing. But as far as I've kind of heard from my teammates, nobody else has really been interested in Akali, and I think it's kind of fair. Like I mentioned, I don't think that she is particularly good. I think she has some good matchups, and she has some absolutely unwinnable matchups. So it comes down to matchup variance, which I think a lot of players aren't a huge fan of. But I don't know. For me, I've been grinding so hard, sweating it out, that I kind of want to just have some fun with for an RQ season. I've already got, I think, 5 invites for my regionals. I've had my fun with it, and now I just want to see what happens if I just throw my hat in the ring to have some fun. So I know it's a little bit, maybe a little disappointing for some people who have talked to me and are like, "Oh, we want to see you compete at the highest level," and I think that will be the case when it comes to the actual regionals. But in the meantime, yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I think that my Akali list could win an event still, but it comes down to my matchup variance. Like, I don't know that there's a ton of control that I have over it, if that makes sense.
You mentioned the regional championship, or the continentals as it will be later. Let's talk about it. It's far in a ways, but has any legend selection crossed your mind? Is Sett something? Is the nostalgia factor something that plays in the back of your head when selecting a legend for the championship?
It definitely does, especially knowing what the tournament is going to be, right? We're going to have 300 to 400 of the best Riftbound players of all time at this event, and only top 8 are going to qualify for Worlds, right? So it's extremely, extremely cutthroat when it comes to that. So honestly, I'm not really sure where my head's going to be at when it comes to playing at that event. Obviously, I would love to have one of those best of sets. We technically, I think they're going to be. They basically said there's going to be like 6 of them, is what it seems like, is my understanding, because they're doing the 2 for EU and NA, and then I think they said something to the extent on the article. Maybe I'm misquoting this, but this was something I thought I saw in the article that said that they're like doing quarterly next year or something like that. When it came
That
to
is the plan, yes.
Yeah, so there's going to be essentially one of these at the end of every quarter, right? Is what it appeared like to me. So in theory, there'll be 6 of each of these over numbers that exist. So I would like to at least have one for, like I said, the collector's sake of it. But beyond that, yeah, not quite that much of an interest in it of like hoarding all of them or something like that. I'm not too.
You do mention like there's going to be such a competitive event. It's going to be incredibly cutthroat. And before you mentioned also, that is actually where Sett struggles a bit when it is facing the absolute best of the best. Is there a world where we're going to see Collin on Diana? Where we're going to see Collin on Cannon?
There is definitely a world. We also have to remember, though, at least based on the current prices of some of this stuff, the RE has a $500,000 bounty that's currently publicly out there, right? So, there's part of it where maybe I do well with Akali and she has a similar number, especially because her over number art is amazing. It's like, well, I'll be like, well, you guys already know what it is. I gotta give that a shot. So I honestly don't know. I think my prediction towards the future is really tough to say. If Set 5 has a legend, that like particularly calls to me, then maybe I'll play that. But yeah, I definitely do have some interest in trying my best to qualify for Worlds, but I do know if I play like the sweatiest deck and walk away with nothing, I will feel some sort of way, as opposed to just being like, man, I could have just gone for the lotto ticket of going for the $500,000 RE or whatever, right? So.
And it has been a topic of conversation numerous times in regional qualifiers, but it's going to be even more of a hot topic for the championships, where it comes to the deal-making aspect, where it comes to the intentional drawing or splitting prize pots. Is that something you're worried about, especially when the numbers start to become this large?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an issue that I think Riot is aware of, and something that people feel some sort of way about. To be honest, I don't really have too many concerns with it, just because it's one of those things where like it's very easy for people online to get upset about stuff like that who aren't even competing. But when you're talking about like life-changing money for people and being able to take a guarantee when it comes to some sort of split, as opposed to just literally gambling for sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars, I'm never going to blame somebody for taking something, especially that is within the rules of Riftbound, as Riftbound currently allows for prize splits amongst people. I'm never going to be upset at people for taking a guarantee of life-changing money over a card game, right? So for me as a competitor, a lot of my, financial incentive is done through like my coaching, my Metafy, through the ChallengerTCG brand, which I think has been really helpful for my mindset of the game. I don't feel like I'm as required to perform at every single event like I have previously, because people have obviously identified that I'm a good player, no matter what the luck of the dice may end up being. I think people will eventually realize and understand that, card games are card games, and variance will happen. So yeah, that's part
as
of it.
a potential, because the handshake deals, I mean, it's a bit shaky, especially, well, we've seen some waves around that before. Now, in other games, there are notaries on the site that can have legally binding contracts. Let's say in the poker world, for example, where splitting and the expected value from finals, etc., is always up for discussion. Is that something you can expect at these larger events, for just, oh yeah, we have the vendors that sell the graded cards, and the notary agency?
Honestly, it would be interesting to see. I don't think it's been something that we've seen yet. I will say that the card game player community is one that's so tight knit, and your reputation means everything in the card game space. So I think that a lot of people have been able to handle the vast majority of things through the just your word meaning a lot in the card game industry. I think we're all good people, or at least the majority of us are. So we haven't had too many issues in But, if we are able to get it in a legally binding contract once we start getting to these crazy numbers, then I think that's interesting. But I know a lot of people will not be a fan of that, as everybody, like I said at home, wants to talk about the competitive spirit and, it doesn't matter that we're talking about life-changing amounts of money. You should just play the card game to play the card game, which, I think is absolutely absurd. It's the same thing for poker. Nobody has ever talked to people and been like, "Oh, you took a split in poker. Wow, you're a terrible person," or whatever. That's not the case. So I don't know why it should be any different in card games.
Oh, and I think there are proper workarounds that still give the competitive spirit space to exist as well, where you can divide up to X of the splitting, and you'll have to fight it out for the remainder of X, Y, and Z. So you still get a game, you still get a good broadcast, and there's still plenty to play for still. Now, moving on, I do want to talk about the role of ChallengerTCG and what role they play in legend selection. Because as a team, you're not doing it by yourself. How helpful is it to be part of a team when you are selecting your legend, either for this regional qualifier or assisting other members of the team?
Yeah, I mean, having people that you can rely on to know that they'll be playing at a high enough level for you to rely on when it comes to your testing and meta selection and all that sort of stuff, I think is obviously extremely impactful. And so I think that's been good. And we built a solid enough team that I think we all play with very different play styles, which I think is extremely helpful. Being able to, if anyone's followed our history, pretty much every event we played at, we haven't had duplicate legends. And that's been kind of twofold, where people don't want to contest each other for the best of, because that obviously gets a little weird. And then it's also just the nature of having people with different play styles and different things that they want to be doing, different goals, all that sort of stuff. So
do you have an example of how someone with an unorthodox playstyle really assisted in I never would have looked at it like that from my perspective?
It's hard to say, just because everyone kind of locks in on a strategy and then we help each other out based on what they need. So for example, Trevor ended up getting top 8 at the last event on Lux combo, right? It's a very unorthodox strategy that kind of popped up at the last second, right? And he just early on played the deck and said that he really liked the play style. So obviously we helped him out and figured out exactly where his problem matchups lied. And he ran the numbers to be like, well, what's the likelihood of me running into a Lilia, for example, where they have the signature spell that's just literally time walk, right? And you just lose the game, right? And it's obviously it was worth it for him to submit it, but he's also a good enough player that he didn't just while we're in our testing sessions, he didn't just only play Lux and just be like, well, this is what I'm doing, so y'all get to deal with this all the time. He understood very quickly that his strategy was very unorthodox and it wasn't super helpful for us to play into it. So he would, obviously, if we needed to test into Lux, he would be the guy that we go to. Beyond that, he would play whatever else that we need. And that's just kind of been consistent across the team, right? Where people have their decks that they will test and they will focus on for maybe half the time, and then the other half of the time they'll test for other people, and it works very well to mesh into what we need in order to kind of get our testing done and iron out our lists. And obviously that's done very well for us. So
do you have something where you're like, I needed to learn this lesson from my teammates because on my own I wouldn't have gotten there?
I think it's just in general, a lot of discussions. It's so hard where we're kind of meshing and hanging out and talking, 8+ hours a day, where it's so hard to pin it down to one thing. But I can say that just in general, I would not be half the player that I am without them being there to motivate me and guide me. And I think this is just kind of one of those things for the people listening at home to try and find a tight-knit group. It doesn't have to be all professional players that have multiple accolades or what have you, but at least people that want to work together. I think it's one of those things that you can build each other up together. As one player in your group gets better, everyone's going to get better so long as they're playing against that player, right? And then it'll compound, and that's a much better way to do it, as opposed to just playing against random people where you don't have any sort of incentive or want for them to get better as a player. A lot of this comes down to talking to people, and then while we're making plays, if you're playing against a random person that you don't know, you're not incentivized to help them in a situation. But if you are playing against somebody and they make like an egregious misplay and they're a part of your group, you can be like, wait, why did you do that? Let's talk through it and understand why I think this was a mistake and why you think this was a correct play. And then in the future, one of you is going to be right, and that'll improve everybody together. So, yeah, I think that's just how you can improve the best in Riftbound, is just finding a group to test together with consistently.
Before we are slowly closing off, I do want to look ahead a little bit past Barcelona, because after Barcelona, we have Singapore coming up. And that is, I am personally looking forward to that a lot, because it feels like the first real opportunity for a melting pot of both European players and Asian players. What are you expecting from that regional qualifier? Will it be very different from what we have seen before now that these new influences are being mixed in?
Honestly, I obviously played in Sydney, and I think that was an interesting thing where a lot of the players that were playing from there were also from Asia as well. As like it wasn't obviously still not the best flight flying down to Sydney, but a little bit more manageable than the majority of other things, right? So I do think that it will be a very interesting event. Singapore is a beautiful city, but also a very expensive one. So I think that it will have a lot of high quality players there for sure. And, we saw a Asian player win Sydney, so maybe that'll be the case, or maybe one of my guys will take home the win. As I feel like I got a few more guys who are actually trying for the win as opposed to best of this time, but we'll see.
Is there something you are expecting to see more of now that there will be a higher representation of Asian players?
I mean, they do play the game very differently over there. One of the things that I always talk about and don't understand is every single one of them has like 1 to 2 Edge of Night in their list. If they're playing purple, you will always find an Edge of Night. Meanwhile, over here, we're like, this card's okay, I guess, but I don't think it's so good that it looks like every list over there, no matter who you are in China, starts with 1 Edge of Night, and then you put 38 other cards in your deck. It's absurd, especially seeing as we never see that card over here. So I don't get it personally, but clearly they're doing something differently than we are. Whether it's better than what we are doing is really hard to say. There so far hasn't really been a ton of crossover between players competing in China and then competing elsewhere, right? So that's where I think the issue lies. Obviously, as a competitive player, I've considered wanting to make the run out there, but their entries are done based on like a lottery system, and you have to play at a local level in order to even get qualified for the lottery. And then you only get selected like a week or two in advance. So it's very difficult to line something up with everything else that I'm doing in the Riftbound space in order to make that happen, as much as I would love to. So
it is quite the investment. Now, do you have any ties to the Asian community, so you can go in not completely blind or just solely what we are seeing on the regional opens in Asia?
I have a few connections, mostly through George. George G has a lot of friends over there from when he was competing in China back in the early Sett 1 days. So he's been kind of my ear on the ground when it comes to anything I need help with out there, which has been nice. So I'm not completely disconnected, but I will say it is very difficult to get past the language barrier and all that sort of stuff. So
there has been the announcement of the exhibition match, where we are getting to see, well, some of the most iconic names from both the Asian scene and the Western scene facing off. How are you going into that? How are you approaching that? What are your expectations around that?
Honestly, it's been a little bit hush-hush even on the information that they've given us. So they've given me like a set guideline of what I will be doing.
A time and a place.
Yeah, of like showing up. It seems like a lot of it is just like interview stuff and wanting to get, various shots that they can use on like streams and stuff like that for the downtime in between rounds. Like if anyone's watched the China streams, and they have all the random ads they do for like the new sets and stuff like that. It seems like they want some portion of that. Then there will be the exhibition match for a lot of us that I think will be interesting, but not the most competitive. Is the way that it's been worded, I guess, is what I will say. So I would say that it's a very different sort of environment when you have a one-on-one sort of thing, and I know who I'm playing against, and I can specifically target them, or they can specifically target me, right? And it's just a simple 1v1 for one match, or in my instance, only one game that's being played. So, there's a lot of variance that comes with that, as opposed to going through like an entire tournament scene. So I think it'll be a kind of a weird sort of environment that maybe will be advertised as like, oh, who's the best NA/EU or China. But I think it's just something that we're doing for fun. So
exhibition matches are meant for entertainment, right? They're meant to get everyone going. If you want the competitive results and who's the best of the best, there's the main event is right there. What is, in your opinion, the most entertaining deck one can bring to the table right now?
Entertaining
can be as wacky and wild as you want it to be.
God, I mean, entertaining is such like a subjective thing where some people want to see like the craziest combo. I would say that like the most entertaining would be some sort of nonsense combo deck. I think there's no amount of pop off that I've seen as much for Sydney round 1, where there was a Volibear Infinite on stream, where there's like an Infinite with Volibear where the guy did it and it took like 30 minutes and chat was just popping off the whole time. But there's a very thin line between that and, say, like the Lux Infinite, where people hate the Lux Infinite because that deck's actually good. So I think in terms of just like overall community sentiment, when somebody finds a combo deck that is absolutely terrible, but they're able to pull it off on stream, that's like the most hype thing that people will ever see, especially if they only win one game and they don't win the match, since like they got to have their fun. They got to live in magical Christmas land and call it a day.
Everybody is talking about star cross, but nobody is talking about when the stars align.
Exactly. So,
Collin, thank you so much for sharing your views upon both Legend Selection and, of course, the mix-up in Singapore. Now, before we send it all back home, anything that you want the world to know, where can people keep up with both the guides that are coming out and, of course, the guaranteed success that Challenger TCG is bound to achieve?
So we are Challenger TCG pretty much on everything, Metafy and X. My personal X is Collin KA. If you want to follow me in my specific journey, then you're welcome to go through that. But I think our Metafy is the best bang for your buck that you can possibly get. If anyone saw Prismat's tweet after the event, he was like, my deck list was posted in Challenger TCG's Discord. So for $20 a month, you can get access to all of our deck lists before we submit it. All of our stuff is 100% public for anyone who supports us. And that's just kind of how we do business. So beyond that, you can ping any of us for questions. And I mean, I can't think of anything else that is going to be a better bang for your buck than what we have in our Metafy. So for people that really want to compete and win some real life-changing money in Riftbound, I definitely recommend checking it out.
Lovely. All of that and more will be linked, of course. Collin, thank you so much. Best of luck in the preparation for Barcelona and Singapore afterwards. And you can make sure that we'll be keeping a close eye on your Akali run. Thank you.
Thank you.